Okay, so now we are live and with Ambassador Khalid Abuleif together with my colleague Michael Melling. We are waiting for people to come in. We have quite a few registrants and are all streaming in right now. So it's going to take a few minutes until we reach a critical mass. I'd like to get to over 100 or so, and then we can jump in. So thank you very much, Ambassador, for taking the time. Michael, always pleasure to share the facilitation with you. We are in 3 different parts of the world. This is the modern world. So, Michael is in Upper New York State. Ambassador Abuleif is in Riyadh, and I'm in Europe. So that makes it in 3 places around the world. It's the modern world of interviews. So I would normally give it, Ambassador, I normally give it 2-3 minutes. So I think that we should allow 1 more minute and then we move on. And I think that it's Friday afternoon for many around the world, and people will be joining for an end of day discussion on a very important topic. Very well. Listen, I think that we should get started, Ambassador. Michael, I will start and then I will introduce first Ambassador Abuleif for those that would need a little bit of background. So Ambassador Abuleif, thank you very much for taking the time to join us this afternoon. This is part of our conversation with personalities that shape the climate change discussion around the world. We had a previous discussion with Carsten Zach, Dr. Zach, Director General in the BMU. You know Carsten very well, Khalid. And it is simply in discussion with, so it's a very relaxed atmosphere, and it is something that we enjoy speaking to people that have a great influence and understand a lot of the dynamics and where this discussion is going on. We're especially in a very special period right now, given the fact that Saudi Arabia is the chair of G20. At the same time, we have had this unfortunate situation with the suspension of a lot of the events and a lot of the activities around the world, including those related to climate change as a result of the medical situation. So what we really appreciate the fact that Ambassador Abuleif, who is the Special Advisor on Sustainable Development to His Excellency, His Royal Highness, the Minister of Petroleum of Saudi Arabia, as well as the Ambassador head of the Saudi delegation to the UNSCC process. There are 2 things that we would like to discuss with Ambassador Abuleif today. One of them is the G20 and the G20 process. Climate change is part of that process. Saudi Arabia has made a clear agenda, and that has been visible to a lot of us. And the second part of it is, of course, related to the UNSCC discussion and the general situation on climate change debates. Michael, I would like to also give you the opportunity to make an initial remarks, if you wish, and then we'll go to Ambassador Abuleif.
Absolutely. Well, my name is Michael Melling. I work at MIT as my day job and with ERCST as a board member. And I'm very pleased and feel honored to be part of this event with Ambassador Khalid Abuleif.
Very well. So, Ambassador, what I will do is I will take life in my own hands, and try to do the work of actually sharing the screen. When we do this, we never know what will going to happen, but we try, and hopefully we will get it right this time. So here we go. We share it, and I hope this is working well. Are you seeing the screen with the circular carbon economy practical and tested model? Is that the slide that you see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And you tell me when you want to change it, and I'll go through the slides. I'll press the next slide. So you tell me when you're ready. I'll give you the floor now, Ambassador.
Well, let me just start, Andrew, to thank you and thank Michael for inviting me here today. I am very much honored that you are considering me an ambassador. However, I am advisor to His Royal Highness, as you have said, on the issue of sustainability and on climate issues. I tell you, it's a great pleasure to be here, and I really look forward to have this wonderful hour with everyone, just to share with you where we are and how are we doing on the climate working group in within the G20 for this year. And this is a group that is called Climate Stewardship Working Group. And the mandate of this group is to come up with really ambitious programs that would really, hopefully this year, show that the world has done something on climate, and we have a step on climate, even though we do have all these challenges that we have with the COVID-19 this year. What we have introduced in this model, and the G20 has been working very hard over the past few months during this year on characterizing and looking at a possible framework that will help us all understand and try to collaborate among ourselves on how we want to move the work on the ground. We're inspired very much on this effort on the Green Deal that our dear friends in Europe has been doing. We're also inspired by the outcomes that we had on the G20 outcomes on Germany 2017, on Argentina, and on Japan. We're trying to bring all those efforts together and to see if there is a platform where we can all work together and complement each other's efforts. And we really felt that the best way that could do this is just go back to basics 101. And the basics that we have is, if you have a waste, you deal with it through circular economy, and go back to those basics: reduce, reuse, recycle. However, in the climate regime, we all understand that there is no way we will be meeting our aspirations that we had in the Paris Agreement and others without also introducing the remove component. And that remove component will become very important also as we move forward to complement the efforts that we have. So that's basically what it is. Next, Andrew, I just wanted to just give you an idea of basically the approach that we have been inspired by. We have really people that has great efforts in this. One example is Mr. McDowell, Bill McDowell, who has been also a great inspiration for us on building this work that we have, and really helping us on trying to move it forward and establish it on a good basics. Also, Carlos Duarte, who works very closely with Bill on these issues, has been great inspiration for us. So basically, we looked at an approach where we could really see a way forward. Then we try to characterize how we can apply it, knowing that the profile of emissions that we have. Then we try to see, okay, what do we want to do from a collaboration point of view as G20 countries? to set the leadership on this issue through looking at a certain platform that I'd like to share with you. And then finally, some concluding remarks on these issues. So let's just start diving into the work that we have in the CSWG so far. Let's look at the CCE approach.
So shall we change slides?
Yes, please. And also next, we will have one further step. Basically, we all know that circularity is an important concept that we have looked at over the past half century on how we want to deal with waste in general. So we have the linear model, the one that we have, where you can just produce, combust, and have waste. However, I think the other model is just to see what can we do based on what we have been developing so far on this, from a reduce point of view, and reuse, recycle, and remove parts. And this basically is where we are going on this. On the reduce side, there is great efforts that is going on. And the Green Deal has been really very much focused on that. However, we know from practicality that the world will be utilizing hydrocarbons, and they will be part of our mix for a while, where we really need to also do a lot of things on that side, on the see what we can do with those emissions from a point of reuse, from a point of recycle, and from a point of remove, circulating that those emissions into our economic system in a way that would create value for us as we move in the future, and also remove the problem and the concerns that we have. Next.
Yes.
Now, with that, next. Yes, with that, what we really looked at is the full emission profile, looked at the greenhouse gas on all the different sectors that we have. And we looked at what are the possibilities to manage this. One of them, reduce. So if you go next, you will see that under reduce, you have great opportunities there. You need to look at your demand in general. You need to look at where are you getting your resources and your inputs. And then you need to look at the efficiency that you can do within the system that would really help you in reducing the emission from going to the atmosphere. So we have great efforts there, and we will share that at a later stage. The other concept is the reuse part of it, is that if you have as an activities that would have an emission, next, Andre, what you will be looking at, how can you take that emission and convert it to something valuable, if there is a way to do that. And I think there is great opportunities in that regard. So you can take greenhouse gas emissions and find ways and means to reuse them as a feedstock into other systems. Next. Then we look at recycle. Is there a possibility where we could recycle this into and put it into products? Can we take these emissions and transfer them into product? And that is also, we do have great opportunities and great applications on that front. And then finally, when we look at reduce, reuse, and recycle, and really we cannot close within a sector the emissions, we should also look at more innovative ways of closing that through remove. And remove would heavily rely on offsets and heavily rely on technologies that would remove greenhouse gases from the system. So basically, this is the model. Nothing new, nothing. It is there. It exists. It's a practical system that is we've been working with for about 50 years, and we are just creating this innovation on how we want to deal with it within the climate system and how we can manage, in general, our greenhouse gas emissions. Next. So now, going to the application. One thing that came out very clear to us from the very beginning when we analyzed this system, next, is basically this chart, which is something we got from IEA. So basically, we are looking at two possibilities. One possibility is energy production and heating. And this is almost consists of 41% of the emissions that we have today. And we need to deal with this in a way because, we really do have great efforts and great technologies in that domain. However, the other side, which we have always forgotten about, or we felt that it was too difficult to deal with, and we saved it for later. But I don't think we can save it for later because I don't think at this stage we can afford delaying any efforts. We thought that the non-energy side sectors, like the sectors that rely heavily on products and services, and those sectors, we identified three hard-to-abate sectors: mobility, industry, and food sectors, where we really felt that these comprise almost 90% of this side. However, let's not forget that this side has both energy use as well as non-energy emissions that are coming from them. So in this side, we'll be looking at both the energy use, the energy that we use into these sectors, and also the non-energy emissions that we are creating in that. However, we felt in these three sectors that the best way to deal with it is to go down all the way to product and build up from there your strategies on how we want to deal with these three sectors as we move forward. Next. From that point of view, we tried to work within the CSWG with all our other dear countries from other G20 in finding ways and means to see, okay, how can we build international collaboration on the efforts where we could build on these 4 Rs, on this very important approach. And we came up with this model that we are right now working with our colleagues on the G20 to see how we could advance it and see how it could contribute as an effort and a tool for us to move this issue forward. Next. So what we did, the 101 part of that platform is to deal with the approach itself. And we looked at the approach, which is basically, we said, the best approach to build on is the, the 4R approaches, which is the reduce, reuse, recycle, and remove part of it. Next. Now, what does this mean? So if we looked at the first part, which is the energy production, the 41%, we would see that we are very well covered in all of this. We really have excellent technologies that are there that could really move the needle on these issues. On the reduce side, we have energy efficiency from a production point of view. We have non-biomass. We have nuclear that could also come in and help in reducing emissions. On the reuse side, you have CCU, carbon capture utilization, and all utilizing these emissions as feedstock into the system. Also, the carbon recycling processes that has been also discussed in our Japanese presidency last year can also contribute heavily to this system. On the recycle side, you have what bioenergy is all about, taking CO2 from the atmosphere and then converting it into products and bringing them back and putting it in the atmosphere in a neutral way. So you will have neutrality in dealing with these issues. On the remove side, you would have to take out of the system, lock it somewhere. You may one day have value for it to utilize it into the processes as you move in the future, which means you really need, no matter what you do, you need to take it anyway away from the system at this stage. Next. Now on the product side, you really have great opportunity. You need to look at demand management. You need to look at process efficiency. On the reuse side, you can look at the feedstock on the recycle, maximizing emission circularity, and the remove on nature-based solutions and other issues that could help you there. Next. What is the added value? We will have added value on the environment side by managing this system. Next. On the social side. Next. On the economics, as well as technology would be the real driver for you to help you move this forward. Next. Now, you have the approach. What is the platform? The platform is two main issues that we have. Next. It is opportunities. Number one is that we need to find out what are the opportunities and how can we deal with these opportunities to move this process forward. Next. You have opportunities in 4 different categories, and we have worked together within the G20 in all of those opportunities. We looked at the policy domain, we looked at the technology side and R&D, we looked at partnerships and the system efficiency part of it. And each and every government has shared their experiences in all these 4 categories. And we're trying to put together a toolbox for all of us to have, as a matter of fact, where we could draw on this toolbox to help us move forward this process. Next. We have then, if you know that toolbox, you need something to accelerate those opportunities into the future. And let's recognize at this stage that those opportunities would depend on a government, their circumstances, their endowments, their way of doing things. So the accelerator is going to be an extremely important point where you really have to bring in the national circumstances and see exactly where can you help the effort, the collective effort, in a certain area where you really have great competence and you could make a difference and make a great results out of it. So we looked at these. There are too many opportunities for the accelerator and the international collaboration to work. Next. First, at the national level, I think we can look at these opportunities, learn from each other, and see how can we integrate this into our plans, strategies, of course, indices, long-term strategies, where we could bring in all those efforts into this if we are going to move our work together. Next. Then you have regional and international. This is where we can cluster together, partnership, and look at programs and hubs and champion certain opportunities so that we can move them forward in a very fast way. Collectively, we will be complementing each other, and collectively we will be moving together towards the aspirations that we have. Next. Then you really need for both of these to move forward, enabling environment and business models that could really bring it forward. And this is where the collaboration and the heart of the collaboration need to really, we need to realize it as we move forward. Next. So with that, Andre, looking just back at this whole effort that we have during this year, we're looking at this circular carbon economy approach during this year presidency, and then how can this contribute to sustainable development, as we have seen earlier. Now, climate is going to be at the heart of it, and climate is going to be the main driver there. Then we're looking at the circular economy as a basis for us to build up from, looking at technology and innovation as a main pillar for that. Then we look at transformation, transforming the emissions challenge to also business opportunity. That would be also a part of it. We will be having values for all options. So all options will be on the table. All options can really move forward our efforts in one direction. Also, we will cover all economic sectors, promoting integrated business models, contributing to economic growth, job creation, and sustainable development, because you really are helping each and every country tap into what their best and how can they move this within their economy and economic system. Also providing a platform for collaboration and clustering of those different governments on different opportunities to move this. And then finally accounts for local and national context which is basically the most important element that we have. Now, with that, I don't want to take more than that and give an opportunity for questions and answer. But just to share with you what the G20 this year is all about. It is about realizing the opportunity of the 21st century for all. And there are 3 aims for that: empowering people, safeguarding the planet, and shaping new frontiers through innovation. And all those 3, I think, were very much embedded in our thinking and on the work that we have in the CSWG here. With that, I close and I turn it to you both, Andrea and Mike.
Thank you, Khalid, very much for this. I appreciate the very complete presentation. I think that certainly would be an interesting discussion that will follow. Michael, let's start by having a conversation between the 2 of us with Khalid Abuleif. What we'll ask for those of you that want to have questions, and can you please pass on to the chat with questions. Michael and I will pick them up and we'll move on with them. So would like to start with Michael. Anything from your side?
Well, thank you, Andre, and thank you, Ambassador, for a fascinating presentation. I think the vision of the circular carbon economy that you outline is compelling and very ambitious. And I would be curious, you mentioned that you're already in conversations with other G20 partners. How you plan to take this up during your presidency of the G20? How you see this potentially featuring among G20 priorities this year?
Well, as a matter of fact, this is a flagship outcome for the Saudi presidency. We really feel very obligated to see how we could make sure that we are meeting that theme that I just shared with you, and making sure that we are all, looking at a platform where we all can together complement each other's work and move towards meeting our international aspirations. So if that could come out of this, that would be a great success for this presidency.
Khalid, what kind of, you mentioned that you're building on the circular economy, the circular carbon economy concept. How would you differentiate? What is the differentiation if you were to, for 101, so to speak, the difference between circular economy and circular carbon economy? They seem to be very close, but probably there is a significant difference. But I'd like to hear your
the circular economy has focused on products in general and waste, and on recycling products, reusing products, and also reusing products, which is wonderful, because that is a basis, as a matter of fact, for the circular carbon economy. Circular carbon economy takes that one step further and look not only at the emissions that come from creating those products. It looks also at the flows and the balance between the emissions and the removals in a manner that would basically address the Paris Agreement overall goal, where we really want to have that balance and the neutrality as we move forward. So basically, you are just taking a circular economy that focuses on the 3 R's and adding an additional R that would also account for the removal side, so that you can meet the Paris Agreement requirements. But also you are taking the products themselves and the associated emission with those products and finding a flow for it that would not go to the atmosphere, that would go into either another industry or another product, or go into somewhere else, any other media that would avoid the atmosphere where the problem is created. Now, the success of that, if you can turn this into an economic value, whereby then it will become a real success, where you can find ways and means to take and those flows of energy and emissions in a way that would take it away from the atmosphere and yet create value somewhere else.
Michael, before I turn it over to you, you have greetings from old friends, from Dan Snyder, from Ambassador Choi, from Republic of Korea. They are here online and they send you greetings. But one question, Dan Snyder kind of says, would the circular carbon economy be significantly accelerated if countries were to attach the value to carbon, either in the form of a tax or a cap and trade system? I would generalize that and say, what kind of incentives are you thinking or considering?
Yes, you know, it is aspirations, and it is at the end of the day, any system that you have to create the value is a system that would really help you move this forward. Now, there are two possibilities where you can deal with this. You can deal with it from a carbon price point of view. But we really do think that it has its own disadvantages, because it would, basically suppress the growth and the economic growth. But also on the other side, where you could do is something similar to what we have done in the oil industry, whereby we created the demand. Methane was an issue with the emissions that we have when we produce a barrel of oil. You have associated gas. Now that is associated gas is methane, and basically that methane we managed to create through investments 2 new cities that would take that methane and convert them into value through petrochemical industry. So you took that methane, and instead of burning it and sending it to the atmosphere, you take that into products and services, and then away from the system by creating another demand on the other side. And with that, we really created value for gas at this stage. And if it wasn't for that creation value wouldn't have been there. So you can do this, I think, and we think that this would encourage growth. Carbon price, we think it would depress growth. And I think if we can find ways and means of marrying both concepts, where we could really find ways and means to create demand, where we could utilize these emissions, in addition to other actions that we take on the other side from a carbon price, that would be very helpful. I tell you, Saudi Arabia has been, they had a great success with taking methane out of the system. And we almost saved 2.8 billion tons of carbon from going to the atmosphere through fugitive emissions on the methane side. And we utilize it into building an industry that creates almost 34% of our manufacturing GDP at this stage, which is really great value at the same time. So this is just one example that has been done.
Michael?
Sure. So you've, I mean, we know that climate change, of course, is the ultimate collective action problem, and you've repeatedly alluded to the importance of cooperation. And I was wondering, switching from the G20, one important forum, to the other main, let's say, focus of international cooperation on climate, the UNFCCC, where, of course, due to the pandemic, we're now in a hiatus, and it's sort of an important time for the negotiations where we don't have the opportunities to interact as we would have normally expected. My question to you would be, Saudi Arabia is an important player in this process. What do you see sort of the priorities on the road to Glasgow now 1 year later? And what do you think is an effective mode of trying to negotiate even when personal meetings and the traditional modes of negotiations are not possible?
We are now in a situation, Khalid, where we are not able to meet. Is this make sense to have, is it feasible to negotiate via Zoom, or that's not in the spirit of Paris?
At the end of the day, negotiation requires great efforts and that personal touch, and also the work together into smaller groups to make it easier to move positions forward. So from a negotiation point of view, I tell you, we have been facing this greatly in the G20 because it really, we're really facing a lot of problem because of not having physical meetings where we could really gather and talk about things and bring compromises that could really take us forward. Now, turning into a virtual system has been extremely difficult. I tell you, and very challenging. And we're just trying to see how we can collectively, with the very short time frame that we have for all governments to be together, to find ways and means to move these issues. So I tell you, it's a great challenge, but I think any challenge with humanity, I think we can find ways and means to meet that challenge, and whether virtually or not, I think we can find a way to see how we could address these issues. But it's not be as good as really working together face to face, looking at each other's eyes and understanding where each and every one of us stands and how can we have a win-win situation where all of us be part of a train rather than leaving some of us outside.
Mike, do you want to follow up or I can?
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I think Article 6, that's your question, Andre. That's your topic.
Ali, we shot a lot of blanks on Article 6. I mean, since Katowice and on and on and on. And it's kind of, is it emblematic? Is it that important that everybody looking at, this is a success, Paris Agreement is a success or not, if we manage this Article 6 or not? I mean, I spent a lot of sleepless nights in Paris kind of working through this, and a lot of too many sleepless nights in Madrid and in many other places. What's going on? I mean, where's the blockage in this? Can we have hope to do this in the end, or what's going to happen?
Well, Andre, I tell you, Article 6 is an extremely important pillar for us to move. And we all know that, many elements within, the circular carbon economy will not succeed without having an element of cooperation among governments on offsetting and find ways and means to address the balance that we're looking for. We know that this is important, but at the same time, we cannot afford to make a mistake on this for a good reason. Any mistake on Article 6 could really undermine these efforts as we move. We have been tackling this issue since 1998, as you remember, Andrew, with projects, the joint projects that we have, projects that are implemented jointly, and then we moved into the CDM, and we tried very hard. And we did not, get the great success that we want out of the CDM because of many concerns that we have. I think also now in the Article 6, we are trying to build a regime that is, highly command and control, and we all know that these systems cannot be solid from one day. These systems would have to, crawl, then walk, and then run. We need to work with them, experiencing them, and tighten them as you move in the future. I know there are some of us who really wants to have a perfect system from today, and those of us who are worried about having such a system because they are worried about a failure that could really bring us to what we have been doing in the past. And I think somewhere in the middle, we need to find a flexible system that would learn as it would grow and move forward. And as we learn and we shape the system, I think we would be able to make it a success later on. But we need to start. We have to have a starting point, And that starting point, maybe it is not up to the rules that we expect that it should be. And I think we should build on it. That's my view, but I think the discussion are going still, and I think we'll have to find a solution that would move us forward.
Mike?
Ambassador, we're getting a number of good questions in the chat, so I'm sure we'll switch over to audience questions eventually. But I wanted to ask one question that sort of links to the Article 6 and the role of cooperation on, well, carbon pricing and carbon markets, and that is the policy process that's ongoing in the EU that I'm sure Saudi Arabia is also following with some interest and perhaps some concern, and that is the EU's carbon border adjustment mechanism. ERCST has been working very hard on this topic for a year now. We've had a number of interesting town halls with other countries, Russia, USA, India, etc. That's not with Saudi Arabia. I would be curious, what are your thoughts on this sort of unilateralism, which the EU is describing as a key condition for the strengthened ambition that it seeks in its near-term and long-term NDC and targets? Do you see this more as a risk for international cooperation, or do you think this might stimulate more climate action around the world? Your opinions would be very interesting.
Thank you, Michael. It's a difficult question to answer, but I tell you, when we started to build the climate regime in the 90s, if you remember, on the principles, Principle 5, was on trade and linking trade to what we're doing here. And it has been my experience on international efforts. When we bring trade into an environmental issue, just go back and look at those other environmental regimes that we have that brings in trade into them. We notice that sometimes the environmental aspect of it will be lost, and the economic interest of it becomes the drivers for us as we move forward. And that's why I say that when we built this regime in the beginning, we really try to avoid doing this. So if you look back into the UNFCCC, which is basically the framework that we worked with, has clearly said that, look, let's get away from this side, because that may change the discussion into more, as you said, unilateralism. And in addition to that, our interest goes into something more than the environment. It's a big mistake if we do it. And I really hope that, we will still work on collaboration. I think we realized after Kyoto that the bottom approach is the way to go. And I think we need to build that bottom approach on the basis of collaboration and cooperation. And having environment as the basic for all of us to move forward. Bringing trade, bringing economics in these discussions could divert us from really reaching the goals that we want. So that's my opinion on this, and I really hope that the EU would consider this deeply, look at it from all aspects, and hopefully would not move in that direction, and work on the direction of making sure that governments are doing their NDCs in a way that they feel that this NDC is a win-win for them. They are doing their growth as well as reducing their emission as per their targets and obligations.
Thank you, Khalid. We'd like to switch to a few questions that we have here. Axel Mikalova, I think is asking the question that how the input of the T20 and the F20 are being taken into account in the climate change related documentation. These are important efforts. They have now become quite entrenched in the G20 overall effort. But how do you practically do this? Can you talk a little bit to that? Because I know that some of the colleagues in CAPSOC and others have been active in this part.
We're saying, Andre, that what we're doing is just a framework. It is something where we could think about as government, because it is what we're doing is a bottom-up approach, asking governments to just plug themselves into something where we could work together and compare to each other, and also complement each other, where we could work together in advancing our collective efforts. So it's just a platform where we're plotting ourselves. Are we focused? For example, I can clearly see that Europe, because of so many circumstances, reduce is extremely important component. So we will have to rely on Europe, on those technologies, and on moving that domain. We can see, for example, countries that have great endowments in hydrocarbons, now that they have obligations to make sure that these emissions are not going to the atmosphere through technologies and so on. So we would like to see that and see how we can marry both things together, so that collectively we will be really moving and marching forward towards our obligations that we have at the international level. Others that have biofuels and would like to see their efforts also collectively put. Those that have great nature capital that could really help the world in protecting them and keeping that. Those who want to invest on removing CO2 from the atmosphere and finding ways and means to also be offsetted for that, recognizing that that could come one day as a part of the value chain from a value point of view, and come in and help that system. So all this together, I think we just cannot leave till tomorrow. We have to start today. We have to plot ourselves. We have to show the world, oh, look, I'm moving in this R, and we will collectively need to collaborate together to see how we can put together a roadmap that brings us all together to where we are supposed to be coming to. So that's what it is. I think whatever comes out of the G20 and the F20 and others, I think should contribute to the nationally determined efforts on moving ourselves forward.
Mike?
Yes, thank you. I think a question that links very nicely to that, you just mentioned CCS and drawing CO2 out of the atmosphere. Oras Tynkkynen from Finland, a colleague that we've also worked with, who is a former legislator in Finland, he asked what your thoughts are on the political economy of CCS, noting that many countries are concerned that focusing too much on CCS and other carbon removal technologies might slow down the focus on reducing emissions in the first place.
Believe me, Michael, I don't think it is one or the other. I think you really need to have all the solutions working at the same time, recognizing that certain regions of the world have certain endowments and certain ways and strength and competence where they could really make a difference. Now, we should not discourage anybody from doing. I mean, for those who have great strength in, for example, having CCS projects, because they do have the knowledge in the fields, the knowledge on this aquifers, they have the knowledge on removing that that greenhouse gas or CO2 out of the atmosphere into these with little effort that they have to put, but they can make a big difference. If we discourage those guys and ask them to go into an area where really they don't have the competence or the endowment or even the investments that they could do, who's going to lose at the end of the day? It is us collectively. So we shouldn't push a government or shouldn't push a group or a region into doing something that we know at the end of the day, they don't have the endowments to make it succeed and move forward. So we should plot ourselves. We should know where our strengths are. We should recognize that the world have different colors. And we really need to see in each and every color, how can we optimize and maximize their efforts towards the collective efforts that we have. I think that's, you will get more. If you're looking at ambition, you'll get more than just pushing everybody towards one direction or one model. And we know for a fact that some of us will not do as much under that model. So, and that's what we're really trying to create, is a model where we can all see each other and understand where our strengths and weaknesses are, and how can we collectively move together towards that direction.
If I may follow up, it's a comment and a question from a colleague that you know well, Kishan Kumar Singh.
Of course I know well. And if he's here, I would like to give him my best pleasure to have him.
Yes, and he had a comment and a question. The comment is that the presentation is very encouraging and it builds tremendous mutual confidence among countries as we implement the Paris Agreement. The question is would the decision on common timeframes be a priority for Saudi Arabia and by extension of the G20, as this would establish mutual confidence to aim for and achieve the highest ambition? So that is a relatively precise and maybe difficult question, but comes from an old colleague and somebody who is G20 island states, who is oil and gas producer. So
absolutely.
Many aspects.
Yes. Well, you know, this goes beyond my paycheck. A common time frame is something that would have to be discussed above and beyond Saudi Arabia and ourselves. It is a collective effort. It is, I mean, we have built this regime on the basis of common but differentiated responsibility, taking into account natural circumstances and capacities. And basically, that would have to be determined in a collective effort. It has to be discussed with everyone. We know for a fact that, you know, this whole regime need to be built on the issue of equity and basis, on the basis of making sure that each and everyone is doing something. However, we expect more from some of us than others. And also we expect more on different aspects of what we need to do. This issue cannot be done with one or two countries. It has to be done by everyone. And everyone, they should have their own, as we say, responsibilities as well as accountability to do so.
Michael?
So the one question put in the comment section, it's very short and a bit apocryphal, but I think it's a very important question. This is from Rawan Al-Fahait on where you would see priorities for investment and focus in research and development. And I think why I say this is so important, I think we increasingly realize that finding affordable and available technological substitutes for so many activities and technologies is proving key, as we've seen in the energy sector with electricity generation. I would be curious if you see other areas of promise, especially, for instance, industry and basic materials. Another question related to cement, whether you see any activities or opportunities in that kind of sector.
Michael, I think each and everyone has a responsibility. I think the industry, the cement industry, they have responsibilities to do something and put a lot of R&D in the direction of not only the energy use side, but also on the process emission side, where they can put together things and move. That each and every industry have a responsibility. And if I ask the cement industry to do R&D for the oil and gas industry, I really think we're doing a big mistake there. If we are asking the food industry to do R&D for other sectors, I think that each and everyone has an obligation to have research and development, and in their field, in 4 categories: in the policies and regulations, in the efficiency, system efficiency side, in the R&D, where you can really, grow. You have growth as well as less emissions, as well as on partnerships where you can put your efforts together with others to make a difference at the end of the day. So these categories are the basis, as a matter of fact, for building opportunities and for moving forward and on the different R's, in each and every R that we have. So For those who have the competence on the R and the reduce side, we really expect them to do much there. And they have an obligation to do something in the 4 areas. Similarly, for the reuse, for the recycle, and for the remove. All of them have to do this, and they should have done this yesterday. But if you don't, you have much more obligation today to move forward, because this decade would make a big difference for all of
us. Khalid, obviously, look, there's 4 R's, and I would, this is my words, not your words or anybody else's. I think that we need them all. It's a matter of, I think you've alluded to the fact there's different emphasis being put in different parts of the world, and maybe they should be put in different emphasis due to endowments and other areas. That's how you presented it. What is the reaction that you're getting from some of your partners at this point? How is that? How is the general reaction? The EU is in the middle of a Green Deal, which is a big deal, and it is, you know, it is a small matter of €1 trillion, and a change, quite a significant change in European behavior, European social arrangements. I mean, changes society really. And the emphasis is very much on the reduce, with the recognition that the remove is going to have to come in somewhere towards the end. But the remove in this case is very much focused on the increment that cannot be dealt with, but certainly not for large industrial and so on. So it's very much so. What kind of reaction, what kind of discussion are you getting? Because these are important partners of yours, whether it's in Europe or United States or China. What kind of reaction are you getting?
You know, to tell you the truth, you know, Europe, we always considered Europe as a leader, and truly, I think they have very clearly said circularity is something that is welcomed, of course, because it's we know that the Green Deal is built on the basis of circularity. Now, I would also respect that they are looking at this from you know, the circumstances that Europe have, where they don't have much hydrocarbon resources. They have security, energy security is extremely important for them to have, and so many other circumstances which really I think would make it very feasible for Europe to focus on the circular economy itself. And of course, you know, the remove is not an important component at this stage, because the circular economy is really where they have the competence, they have the leadership, and they can do a lot in that side because of the way the economy is built in Europe. But and then we also listen to the other side and many other sides. You have others that have great endowments in these resources. So, you know, that has to be also taken into account as part of that discussion, as long as everybody they're doing their utmost to move towards their obligations that they have signed to at the end of the day. And then you have the others who have great, you know, natural capital that could really make a difference for the world. And also these are, you know, another category that needs to be looked at. But you have a category that they do not even have an access at this stage, and they don't even have clean cooking. And we really we need to find ways and means to give them the leverage where they can establish a better future as we move forward. That is exactly as we said, affordable, reliable, and sustainable at the same time as we had. So, you know, we will complement each other. I know Europe has great strength, but also they do understand that we need to collectively work together and coordinate together on a way to move forward. So I respect greatly the emphasis that they have in the reduce, because that is extremely important. That would avoid the emission in the first place. But we're in a world where we really need to work together and find ways and means to see how we could move that needle forward.
Michael, a couple of more. We'll take a couple of more. I think, Ambassador, it is, I have to emphasize, this is Friday, so this is a day off. So Khalid is the only day that he could actually guarantee that he would be available. Otherwise, you know, there's the usual call from His Royal Highness or from other people, and it's always uncertain. So taking the Friday off and spending it with us instead of the family is very much appreciated. Michael?
Thank you, Andre. Ambassador, we have a question from Grzegorz Peszko of the World Bank, who sends his regards to you. Andre and I had the pleasure of working with him last year with the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition. And he asks about the role of diversification in countries such as Saudi Arabia and how you see that being a contribution to climate mitigation of oil and gas producing countries.
I'm sorry, Mike, I did not get that. Somehow the internet was disconnecting, so my apologies, I did not hear you.
Absolutely. No, I'll happily repeat. So from Grzegorz Peszko, where you see the role of diversification by countries such as Saudi Arabia as a contribution to climate mitigation internationally?
I think diversification is an important part of this whole thing. We all know that the only way we can have an economy that could really contribute heavily to this, if it's an economy that is matured enough and that does not rely on one sector. And I think Vision 2030 in Saudi Arabia has been put in a way whereby it really supports heavily the indices for the kingdom, where we are looking at ways and means of building those different sectors in the best available technology realm, so that we have an economic diversification that is fully in compliance with best practices and best in class, as a matter of fact. So building, but building better as we move forward. And that's, I think, what we have in the Vision 2030 for economic diversification.
Khalid, I think that we have a tricky question a little bit. It gets a little bit technical, I would say, but and you are a policymaker. You're not in the details of all the technologies, but there seems to be some doubt that the question is, can you realistically expect to reach large-scale deployment of the removal technologies that can actually have a material impact? Is this something that, based on the discussion that the work you've done in Saudi Arabia, in Aramco, in SABIC, in the G20, is this something that realistically it's a wedge that would be significant enough? It's been a promise for a while. It hasn't materialized realistically in a significant way. I do remember my friend Ostado gave me for Christmas once a book about CCS. I never read the book, but he gave me one. But it never really reached that kind of level so far. So do you think that this is something that is realistic?
And what we have always said, Andre, that one R cannot resolve this issue. We really need all the R's. All the R's need to work together and need to have a solution at the end of the day. There is nothing that we could say at this stage that it is 100% guaranteed that we're going to get what we need, where we want to go. Not in the reduce, not in the reuse, not in the recycle, not in the remove. I think just shooting down any option at this stage is making the risk higher. I think we should make sure that we do not stop anybody from any of those R's, and make sure that they are starting as soon as possible to build the plans. And eventually we need to collaborate and calibrate also how we want to move with the different R's as we move forward. But let's start strongly in each and every R and make sure that we are contributing heavily to exactly what we had as 101 for us for half a decade. It has been working so far. Then we have a great effort, and we may have a great opportunity to also benefit from it on the climate change side. But we will not know this unless we have it in the ground and move it and see exactly how it help us move towards that objective that we have.
Mike.
Ambassador, I have a follow-up question from Dan Reifsnyder again. This brings us back to the G20 with which we started. And he was asking, since we've talked a lot about carbon capture, utilization, and storage, what the sort of politics within the G20 are for CCUS, if you think that all members support it, or if there are individual countries that are not so supportive of it.
It's obvious. I mean, it depends where are you in the map, and where are you on the platform, and those who feel that this could really make a difference are there, and those who doesn't are there. But eventually everybody realize that we need to work together, and we need to complement each other, and we need to work towards one objective, which is basically what we have signed on to. So of course, you would have that discussion. Each and everyone wants to see their model move forward. But I tell you, we all know that one model will not work. I think many models have to come together and build on them to hopefully come to the solution that we need at the end.
I think that we have subjected you to a barrage of questions. I think that people are also getting somewhat tired at this point. It is this Friday afternoon, and including especially for you, not only for us, but especially for you that have been answering questions for the afternoon. A lot of responsibility. I mean, you have the G20, the summit of the G20 is coming up. Then you will start refocusing again as we move forward next year into the NSCC process, which is now backlogged and with a number of meetings missing. How are you going to transit from one to the other? I mean, the G20 is a very much smaller group, in a way compact, in a way with different economies, but nevertheless has a certain compactity to it. The UNSCC process is a very broad group with much more diversity, including inside the G77. As a parting comment, how are we going to kind of marry these two and make them work together, from moving from one, in the case of Saudi, moving from one to the other?
To tell you the truth, we had this opportunity. We know that we have countries that represent almost 80% of the world's economy, as well as 80% of the world emission. And I think if we can have an understanding, at least out of this, on how we can work together and extend our collaboration within this group, within this smaller group, I really think that it would be a great contribution to the bigger group. And of course, as you said, we'll see how we want to move on this, and then later on we'll have to think about how we want to think about it from a much bigger point of view, which is basically the full UNFCCC. Let's not forget that there are so many other factors that we may not see at this stage. And you can only see when you are there within your bigger group in the UNFCCC. And to me, I think whatever you find above and beyond this smaller group is an opportunity also, and something that would help us make it better even. So, I'm optimistic in nature. I would say that we would need to work together on this group and see how far we can go. And then later on, see how we can take this up into a much bigger group and also benefit from what comes out of it.
Ambassador Khalid, thank you very much on behalf of Michael and myself and the people that joined us today, and they took the time to listen and listen and ask questions. We want to thank you very much for taking the time on Friday. I think it was a fascinating glimpse into the world of the G20 and the policy of the kingdom. I think people are eager to learn more about the Vision 2030 and the whole development in the kingdom as it moves into new areas. So again, thank you very much for taking the time, and thank you to all of you. We'll be back and we will continue to share this with other decision makers and influencers in the climate change policy. Thank you, Khalid. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Andrea and Michael, and it's truly a great pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.